The Banking Scene Director's Cut goes behind the scenes, sharing stories and insights to help you build the bank of tomorrow.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Rik.
2 weeks ago, you wrote an article about your panel at the Banking Scene Conference Luxembourg. Been already a month. Time flies, isn't it?
I believe it was 2 weeks ago that I wrote the article. Blooming heck.
Yeah. But I do remember that a lot of people thought that we had the strongest lineup and content so far in Luxembourg, which is great. And I think because rethinking relevance is such a topical theme, I'm happy to do it again in Amsterdam and in Brussels. You could link it to a lot of things, and it all comes back to like, what's the role of a bank going forward? And you had the chance to ask all your critical questions to the banks on what that means in a digital context. What was your key takeaway there?
Key takeaway, because my panel was called Rethinking Relevance in a New Way of Digital Banking, New Wave of Digital Banking. And the key thing is it's all about humans.
That was, I think, keyword, well, except for words like D, etc. But like one of the key words of the panel was human.
It was just definitely all about AI and digital should be used to enhance the customer relationships. Claire had made a point about, automate everything in your everyday daily banking, the stuff that the customers expect to happen fast, the things where the customers don't want to deal with a human and they just want frictionless. But when they need humans, make sure there are humans that are available to them. And if you're going to use automation and AI and things like that, use it to become more human, as it were.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the key challenge that we will be discussing at other events as well. How do you balance it out? Because, of course, you want to have the human in the loop when things go wrong, but how many people do you want to keep aside just in case something goes wrong? And how much are you going to rely on the digital platform?
And it's not only when it goes wrong. Let's just correct that one as well. Claire had drawn a great analogy. She said, everybody's got a favorite coffee shop where they know the barista and the barista knows them. You walk into the coffee shop and the barista just says, "Do you want your usual?" That's when you know you're home in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Right? And she said, look, it's almost impossible for any size bank, even a small bank, to know every customer to the level of a barista. However, you can use digital to make the customers feel more like you are their personal barista. So know that you can have that extra information on hand for personalized context and things like that. And that was something that Yosef had also brought up, when I had been speaking to him, saying, in his viewpoint, from an industry perspective, from their clients.
Yosef is from FinShape, head of AI.
When he was saying he sees that the biggest benefit that their clients are looking for is to provide individual banking, an individual banker at an individual level. And interestingly enough, Lloyd's Banking Group announced in November last year that they plan to be the first UK bank to implement an AI-powered personal banking assistant for every single one of their customers. Now, they said early 2026 launch. I would love to speak to somebody from Lloyd's Banking Group about that if they could. Maybe we could even have them on the show.
Have your contacts.
Well, this is a subtle shout out to the few people that I know in Lloyd's Banking
They will
Group.
speak to them at Finovate.
I did speak to a couple at Finovate that may be willing to, I don't know how much they're willing to share. I don't know how close they are, but we've spoken about the concept of an AI banker before. And indeed, Claire had told me that augmented banker is one of their key propositions that they're currently working on.
Makes a lot of sense.
But the interesting thing that became a little bit a part of the discussion was a lot of the banks measure their success through NPS, Net Promoter Score. And is that still a relevant metric to measure your relevance to your customers, because NPS is quite a broad brush thing.
Mhm.
And Claire said that they are currently investigating at Bank Raiffeisen, they are investigating the potential of implementing a more granular level NPS. So almost down to customer level, but very much at customer segment level. So instead of being a net promoter score across all customers of the bank, it'll be much more targeted and focused, which I think comes...
And SNPS.
SNPS standing for? Segmented.
Segment, yeah.
Segmented net promoter score. But if you think of it, if you've got a personal banker, AI personal banker, or a digitally augmented, or it makes sense that the score that you are scoring the bank on is for that specific instance, entity, segment, whatever you get. So people need to have a look at how they manage their relevance going forward, how they measure it, shall I say. It is something that I also brought up with Arnaud Clement from ABBL, who you had a separate conversation with that we will add into this segment. At the end of the segment, we'll just put in the whole conversation that you had with Arnaud to get a more broader industry perspective. What else from you? Did you manage to listen to the panel while it was on, or were you busy with other things at the event at the time?
I was trying to keep my attention as much as possible to the panel. Another key topic was fraud, which definitely I think resonated across the room, not just as a growing concern, but also as an opportunity for the financial industry to rethink their relevance. In the past, it was more about we have to deal with it, whereas today, financial institutions seem to be starting to see it as a way to show the wider world that they're there to help. It's a challenge, I'm well aware, but it is also an opportunity when you think about relevance at large. Because perhaps in a further future, the relevance of a bank is no longer purely in product sales or realizing dreams, because all of that can be done automated, but more in the human side. Again, human. But when you look at the biggest challenges in fraud, it's maybe less technological, but much more behavioral.
And I think a lot of the conversations that we've been having recently around fraud has got to do with the speed at which everything is happening. I think Arnaud hinted at that as well, in terms of how the window to detect and do something about a potentially fraudulent transaction has compressed so much in a world of instant payments, and also in a world of instant expectations, because you can actually, as a bank, you can slow down things if you want to. The trouble is you've got that tension against your customers who are expecting everything to be happening at the speed.
Well, these days also regulations.
Yeah.
Payments regulation, etc., plays a role there too. And yes, it has a couple of measures included, but is that enough to fight some very specific cases in the fraud space? Maybe, maybe not. There was a call for more collaboration. I discussed that with Arnaud too, who said that I think in the future, so he explained in the future, I hope more collaboration between banks to exchange also fraud cases, etc., where I raised the concern that perhaps because of regulatory requirements, we're not able to, like in Belgium, it's a living concern that because of privacy regulation, we simply cannot exchange best practices to a certain granular level, where he expected that probably because of the high tensions on fraud these days, the regulatory context may change in the future as well. So that's going to be a very interesting space to follow, I think.
That's a similar message that's been coming through in the interviews that I've been doing for our fraud white paper that I'm doing for research. Both from the banker's side and from the supplier's side, they get the feeling that regulation will have to change. They've already got these collaborative databases of shared information from telcos, for example. And a lot of the social media companies are now voluntarily sharing information on suspected scams and potentially even suspected bank account numbers associated with advertising for scams. So we get it from outside of the direct financial services industry And yet, as you say, internally, it seems to be a constraint, but there is that feeling that things are changing there. There was something else that came out of the discussions, my pre-panel preparation discussion, that unfortunately I didn't really have time to surface on the panel. And one of those was a question to all three of the panelists that I had asked him previously on how should legacy banks compete with the new entrants in the marketplace that, break things and do things fast. What's it, go fast and break things kind of a thing. Because those neobanks and the new banks and the sort of quasi-banks, that kind of thing, don't have this massive legacy of 100+ years of reputation to worry about. So how should they compete? And I had a very astute answer from one of the panelists who I won't name because they didn't bring it up in the panel, but they said that legacy banks should not try to compete on every single front or every single new product or new bell and whistle that those neobanks put out.
I think I have to agree with them. Yeah.
And actually almost treat those neobanks and that as a testing ground. Because as this person said, some of those things might be released now and in a year from now, it's a completely forgotten about thing that's gathering dust. And if you as a legacy bank with a huge reputation are constantly trying to chase these bright, shiny things, why?
Yeah.
And there was
then you can also ask yourself, what are we building? Are we building what the neobank wants or are we building what the customer wants?
And that was a thing that came through time and time again, is that digital trust is not the same as human trust, and that the differentiation that all of the banks with a big history and reputation have is they have the trust of humans at the moment. And they have that trust at a human level. And no matter what the newcomers do, they have to first build digital trust, because they don't have humans a lot of the time.
Or wait until the bots take over.
Well, yes, once we are not dealing with our banks, maybe things will be a little bit different. But if you've been watching what's happening on the Moltbook platform at the moment, don't know whether you know about Moltbook platform. Oh my goodness, it is a platform for AIs to talk to other AI. Yeah, humans can only observe. Humans can't participate in this. It definitely looks like something that even Hollywood sci-fi could not have even thought of inventing in their wildest nightmares. It's horrendous. If people are listening to this and they don't know what Moltbook is, look for Moltbook, M-O-L-T book.
I hope as the head of growth, you're already considering how to build an AI agent conference for the banking scene.
Well, funny you should say.
Where we can only observe and they can buy the tickets and get sponsorship deals, etc.
So long as we can make some money out of it, so what? But there was...
That sounds a bit opportunistic, though.
Yeah, well, actually, if you've ever had a look at the Claude AI platform, Anthropic's platform, if you look at their YouTube channel, they've got a whole series of YouTube videos where the founders built an AI to run a physical shop in the Anthropic office and get it to make money. Because they wanted to see the only part where humans were involved was actually putting the physical items into the vending machine. Otherwise, everything else, the AI set up the supplier agreements, set the pricing, did the marketing, did the whole lot. Yeah. I won't give away any spoilers. Watch the couple of YouTube videos on there. It was very interesting. They tried to get their AI to make money. It did make a bit of money for them. In the end, it lost a big chunk in the middle. It was an interesting experiment. But there was one other thing that when I was talking to Yusuf that, again, didn't have a chance to really surface completely. I'd asked his advice for people looking at AI. I said, what do you think the focus should be on AI right now for the immediate 12 months? And he said that he thinks people should stop focusing so much on pure efficiency and start looking more at revenue opportunities. He said, because the pure efficiency side, you're getting lots of this that, the leaders are making these grand statements about how many hours and people and things like that they're going to save. and yet none of it's coming through. He said, stop looking at AI as a pure efficiency tool. Look at your entire end-to-end process. And he gave an example where one of the banks that they were working with had said, our problem with AI is that we have got so many new use cases that people want to put in that our innovation pipeline is completely blocked. We can't put in anything more for the next 5 years. We just can't. And he said, while this might sound like an efficiency gain, he said specifically within their pipeline, a large chunk of that pipeline was being taken up by humans doing test cases and user acceptance testing and writing the specifications for things. And he said they have a software development lifecycle, an SDLC tool, which dramatically reduces that part. And he said that unlocks innovation. And he said, in unlocking innovation, it increases revenue. So he said, as opposed to looking at how can we save a person or a head count, look at where are your blockers at the moment and how could you put AI into your processes to be able to unlock more revenue. Don't just look at it purely as efficiency. So I think that was, again, quite an interesting way at looking at AI at the moment because of all of the hype that's going on. And hopefully we'll dig into some more practical use cases on my AI panel in Amsterdam, where I'll be looking for more concrete use cases from Rabobank and our other participants in the panel that are yet to be confirmed over there.
ABN AMRO, FinShape.
We have got ABN AMRO, and we have FinShape on the panel there as well, and potentially one more bank to include it. But I think with that, we should hand over and bring the session to an end by just handing over to you and Arnaud to close off the session with us. We'll speak to you soon, I'm sure.
Arnaud Clement, very welcome at our show. For the people who were not at the Banking Scene Conference 2026 Luxembourg or are not aware who Arnaud is, he is the Head of Payments and Innovation at ABBL, also board member at the European Payments Council, and a very frequent and loud voice when it comes to the startup community in Luxembourg and also beyond, I think, isn't it, Andrew? Arnaud.
Yes.
The habit. So you were part of a panel back at 2 weeks ago at the Banking Scene Conference Luxembourg, talking about the new wave of digital banking and relevance. When we talk about relevance in banking today, what do you think most people still misunderstand?
I think the major point I see is really the trust at scale. I think people are really looking for trust in a certain moment of the life cycle of the customer. It's a lifelong exercise, in fact. You need to bring trust in your relationship and to be relevant in each occasion, each transaction. It's a long-term or long-run effort.
Yeah, and a very difficult one, I presume, as well, because as I frequently say, you can't build trust. Trust is built for you. And that depends on a very consistent long-term relationship building in a context where you have different generations that also have different expectations.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Banks often blame, that was also part of the discussion, they often blame regulation for moving slowly as a constraint for innovation and superior customer experience sometimes. For where you sit, is regulation really the constraint or is it something else?
For me, it's an enabler of trust first, and of clarity. I think I've been in an event on payments. I've heard the term regulation, regulator, all those terms several times, and people were looking after because they enjoyed the quality of dialogue they can have with the regulatory authorities in Luxembourg, for example. Brings clarity. It helps to focus on the right points, and so that's for emerging businesses. That's very important for them to have this kind of input.
Yeah, I guess in the context of innovation, also allows people to speak a similar voice, similar language, because you have these rule books that define how to talk about what is possible and what is not possible.
Yes, in fact, as you said, everyone is on the same pace.
Yeah.
They have the same understanding, they have the same requirements, so they are building in the same direction. So it helps a lot in a small ecosystem to focus on the right problematics.
Yeah, especially I think in Luxembourg, where you have a lot of international institutions that are building pretty unique ecosystems sometimes in a very small country.
Mm.
Not always to serve the Luxembourg population or these Luxembourg markets, often also far beyond, which explains why your financial services industry is so incredibly large compared to the size of the country.
Yes, we are serving customers from Luxembourg, but they can be everywhere in the world, in fact.
Yeah, exactly.
So we need the same framework.
You were lucky to be in a panel with Andrew Forster. In that panel, you highlighted fraud as a priority for the coming months. Do you see fraud prevention becoming one of the main ways customers judge whether a bank is still relevant?
I think this is the place where you have the trust issue. That is the most
Yeah.
relevant. In fact, when you enter this world of payments or fast transaction, you need a lot of trust in your counterparts, in your intermediaries, in your channels. So it's before you've seen that fraud was more post-mortem exercise, I would say. You make you had a view on the fraud after the exercise. Now it's
Yeah.
all around the life cycle of the transaction. So you need to be aware that today some people will check your transaction upfront before the execution, and the liability will be more complex to establish.
Yeah, absolutely.
From the starting from the telcos and until your payment service providers, until the market infrastructure. So you see that's a place where we have a real role to play, I think, as bankers, to make sure that this is also good for our customer, so that they can trust the full system.
Yeah. Yeah, because today the process of a fraud from the beginning of initiating it to receiving the money as a fraudster has become so long, and it's only like somewhere in the middle that banks are actors. So they don't have a lot of play in fighting frauds, but they are always held responsible because there's money involved. And when it comes to money, people get back to the bank.
Yeah, that's what we see also here in Luxembourg. There are some fraud schemes that last several weeks.
Yeah.
From the start, establishing a fake website, for example, etc. But the sequence that you have inside the bank is very short. It's 8 to 12 minutes max. So you see, it's only a small part of the fraud life cycle.
Yeah.
You need to be equipped to fight this sequence, and the problem will be to analyze the weak signals to make
Yeah.
sure that we enter a fraud scheme and not something business as usual.
And do you think there is more collaboration possible between the banks to fight that kind of fraud?
I think that's maybe not a missing part, but something to improve the collaboration across banking sector. I mean, we see that the money is going from one intermediary to another one.
Yeah.
What collaboration to analyze and to have this overall oversight of the payments, and make sure that you can capture all the small signals to rate your transaction.
Yeah.
To assess the risk, etc. I think that's we'll need a more data sharing. I think, but
Is that possible? Because, for example, in Belgium, there are a lot of regulatory constraints when it comes to privacy in more collaboration in the fight against fraud for banks.
no, for the moment, but it's I agree. There are some limitations in the data sharing possibilities, but we see with the new regulation that is upcoming on PSR. I think that the public authorities also have a view to extend the possibility to share
Yeah.
data, etc. So it will come. I'm quite confident it will come. It will take some time, but it will come.
Yeah. In the panel, you were joined by Claire Lebneau from Banque Raiffeisen. The bank is a cooperative bank. Celebrated its 100th anniversary last week. Her key message was make sure that we don't forget about the people behind the process and the people in front of the process, well, the customer. Another participant, he was an AI specialist, Joseph from FinShape. So he had that balance between human versus machine kind of a thing. As banks automate more, where should they draw a hard line and say, here a human is non-negotiable according to you?
I think what is unique from a human point of view is the judgment capability.
Yeah.
I think you can have some scoring, automated scoring. You can have some automated processing. That's quite obvious, and that's where you will gain efficiency. But at the end, where you have to take a decision, it's a balance between complex parameters.
Yeah.
And this feeling, this emotional, that makes your brain unique. That's where I think the human is critical in the loop.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Maybe one last question. You've seen many industry events. You join many association events, etc. as well. What makes conference like the ones of the banking scene important for the banking industry right now? And what should bankers take away from it, according to you?
I think one key message is that innovation will come from the dialogue that we have between us, between peers, between industry leaders. I think it brings a lot of key insights, and we are exposed also to other players, like the community you are bringing in Luxembourg from Belgium and abroad. I think it's really add a value for the ecosystem.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. I also witnessed the value myself. Never, I think we had more people interested of joining our event through ABBL than this year. So I'm very grateful for the collaboration. I look forward to have more like this in the future.
Thank you so much, Rik.
Thank you, Arnaud, and we'll speak again very soon. Bye.
Bye.